Look closely. Would you go to a concert like this? This was Whitney Houston's hologram concert, which took place years after her death. It's just one of the ways that technology has allowed us to connect with the dead. Grief is the normal process and range of emotions we go through as we adjust to the loss of someone. It affects people differently, and there's no universal way to cope with it. On average, 50 million people die each year, and this is expected to increase. 71% of us use a smartphone every day to either send or receive a text. That's over 100 billion messages sent per day to communicate with friends and family from all over the world. But have you ever considered texting the dead? The transformation of technology has influenced the way we grieve, and I'm investigating the relationship between grief and artificial intelligence, and whether it's wonderful or worrying. Linda Chamberlain lost her husband Fred to prostate cancer in 2012. They were married for over 40 years and made a lifetime of memories together. Linda has always been keen to stay connected with him, even after his passing.
Fred and I met back in 1969 in San Francisco. Fred was a Navy diver. He loved diving and he taught me to dive, so we went scuba diving a lot. Was one of our favorite things. The other favorite thing was caving. He loved caving and he taught me to do that too.
Grief bots are a simulation of a departed loved one. They're like a messenger service that imitates the language of the deceased, using data from social media posts, text messages, and videos. In the year after Fred's death, Linda collected photographs, videos, and letters. She then uploaded them onto an online platform that creates a digital version of someone, known as a mind file. Mind files can be created using a website called LifeNaut. It's part of the Terrorism Movement Foundation, which develops technology for human life extension.
We essentially wanted to give people a way to upload any digitized reflection that represented their values or beliefs or attitudes, even their mannerisms or behavior. There is the option of training a chatbot to talk and think like you, specifically based on your supplying the information, the content, the answers. And that becomes, the more you work on it, the more it grows like a branches on a tree. It becomes more laden with context and more satisfying and more complex in its ability to interact and answer questions.
I spent a year full-time working on both my mind file and his mind file. It definitely helped with the grieving that I was going through at that time because it gave me something productive to do, something I felt was helpful to Fred as well as myself, but it was important for me to have a feeling that I was able to do something useful.
The benefits of grief bots are already being acknowledged, even though they're still in the early stages of development. The positives vary, but for most, they give great comfort and assist in the grieving process.
I can imagine as grief develops, as mourning makes its journey, people could find this a very helpful way of representing their ongoing relationship and connection with the person who's died. I think it works on some of our deepest instincts for relationship and for attachment and for love, and so used carefully at the right time, I think it would be very useful.
It's just like having a picture or having a voice recording can be very comforting, but those things are static and they don't really offer anything for the future except helping you to remember that person. I would think that knowing that that person has a real technological chance at living again must make anybody feel better.
The big pro has to be bringing comfort. When you're grieving, you've lost someone important to you, to be able to kind of have the feeling or the sense of connection for just a little while can be very comforting and brings some peace that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Technology has enabled us to communicate on a basic level with the dead, but while it's positive for some, there are growing concerns surrounding the use of grief bots.
It's really early days, and even recognizing what devices currently have AI in and how it's available to us and what functions it can deliver. And I think there's a lot of almost overestimation because of movies and TV. We think it's sentient and we can create other beings like ourselves, and that is very far from the reality.
So, although we're happy to use this technology, we don't know the full extent of how it uses us. We freely provide information on a day-to-day basis. This data is then collected for artificial intelligence. Professor Rodney Jones from the University of Reading specialises in technology and how it uses language to communicate.
All of your data is being collected. Everything you type into Google is being collected. Every click you make on the internet is being collected. Every post that you click on, every like is being collected. And people can use that information, if they gather enough of it, to figure out quite a lot of things about you.
Mohammed Ahmad created a grief bot of his late father, who passed away in 2013. He hopes the grief bot will give his daughters the chance to speak with the grandfather they never met. However, whilst using the grief bot has been a positive experience, he acknowledges the data-related problems that come with it.
The main issue is that because I'm using historical data, the conversations that I've had with my father many years ago, and I would say the data is biased more towards the last few years of his life. We're talking about a system which doesn't, if I were to use that term, doesn't know anything beyond 2013. So from that sense, it's stuck in time.
I think the biggest problem they have with human-computer communication is not in the area of semantics, that is understanding the meaning of words, but more in the area of pragmatics, which is how we sometimes say things in indirect ways. So, humans often say things in very, very indirect ways, and it's very, very difficult for computers to understand us because they don't have the kind of contextual information that humans have.
It seems there are technical issues with grief bots in regards to data collection, but there are other concerns surrounding the mental health of society too. We spend roughly 4 hours on a smartphone each day to connect to those around us, and this is on the rise. Communicating on a grief bot blurs the lines between reality and a new virtual world, making it harder for those grieving to move on.
Yeah, I have an element of worry that we could potentially end up with a group of grieving people glued to their device, having a conversation with software, instead of rebuilding a life and engaging with other human beings.
I can see some people becoming obsessive and not wanting to let go, not wanting to leave. For any of us who've ever been in a relationship, there's a period at which time we do, we kind of obsess and we look at their Facebook page, or we look at things we shared.
You're in a state of disbelief, and then suddenly you've got this little thing on the text that says it's them and they're talking. You could see how this could then prolong the feeling of pretending to yourself. There's not denial, it's just like, it's not real. So getting to the point of accepting someone's dead could potentially take a lot longer.
There's lots of innovations with technology where there's sort of an assumption, oh, we can make this, we should just make it because people will want it. But if you're talking about something where people are vulnerable and, you know, they're grieving, do we want that? Would we want that?
And grief bots aren't for everyone. Vanessa Saville lost her daughter when she was just 23.
Eva was very bubbly, full of life. She had a great joie de vivre and was very friendly, loved everybody. So yeah, she was very bubbly, very happy child, loved everyone. She just, was a lovely, happy girl. I don't think I will ever accept it. I would put it as learning to live with it. I learned to live with her loss.
Vanessa saw a grief counsellor to help with her bereavement. She hasn't used a grief bot and doesn't think she ever could.
I know that she's not here, and I've got my memories of her, and if I want to hear her talking, I can watch one of her videos. So I don't think that would be very helpful to me. I think it's a bit strange, and I want to remember her as I want to remember her, not as somebody who is using her phrases and pretending to be her.
Whilst this technology exists, society needs to decide whether grief bots are an appropriate and manageable product for the future.
It raises not just technological questions, but also ethical questions, also moral questions. Do we really want to live in a society where we can actually replace people with technology?
What if there's someone who says that, well, I do not want my likeness to be made after I pass away? I mean, our legal systems are not equipped to deal with situations like that.
Technology is constantly outpacing the law, and lawyers are having to work hard to keep up with the issues it presents. They're already starting to see lawsuits concerning digital legacies and the use of artificial intelligence, but with limited legislation, the cases are proving difficult to solve.
Two of the bigger issues that jump out of it is one, in terms of defamation, you can't libel the dead. So if a chatbot says something that affects the reputation of somebody who's no longer with us, then that's not a claim that can be brought. The big issue, I think, is at the minute in data protection. If you're having a fairly sensitive conversation with a grief bot, and that gets out into the wider world and that gets hacked, that's potentially the kind of thing that can lead to lawsuits too numerous to count.
The rise in technology has changed our day-to-day lives, and with the development of grief bots, the way we grieve is changing too. There are benefits to texting the dead. However, there are still problems to be solved, questions to be answered, and a debate to be had as to whether this is something society wants or needs. For some, it's wonderful, but for others, it's worrying how such a small thing could cause so much technological, psychological, and legal damage.